I'm Dr. Nick Higgs, Vice President for Strategy and Programs at the Templeton World Charity Foundation, and I'm here today to introduce our Request for Ideas process, provide guidance, and answer any questions you might have. I'm also joined by my colleagues online who will help me monitor the chat box. And on that note, please do introduce yourselves there. Let us know which organizations you're representing. So today we're going to start with an introduction to the Templeton World Charity Foundation, how we work, and why we're asking for new ideas. Then we'll discuss what we're looking for in more detail, what kind of ideas are a good fit for us. And this will include some details of our core funding areas. Then we'll look at how the process works, how to submit an idea, and we'll also leave lots of time to answer your questions. So the Templeton World Charity Foundation is one of 3 grant-making organizations founded by Sir John Templeton. Some of you may have heard about this RFI through our sister philanthropies, the Templeton Religion Trust and John Templeton Foundation. We each operate independently to pursue Sir John's vision. The Templeton World Charity Foundation exists to catalyze discovery and accelerate progress in the spiritual search for meaning, purpose, and truth. We promote scientific findings and religious exploration to inspire new perspective on life's deepest questions. Our grant making is organized into programmatic priorities. These are strategic programs of investment that seek to advance our understanding of a topic of relevance to our mission. Our website gives an overview of our current priorities, and you can explore these to get a sense of how we work. Over the past 5 years, we've made sustained progress with a strategic focus on human flourishing. But now we're ready to explore new directions within the full breadth of the mandate that our founder gave to us. We're looking to make investments in new priorities, and this is where we hope you'll join us. Our founder published his vision in a book entitled The Humble Approach, and we take up this same spirit of humility in deciding our new strategic directions. In particular, we're seeking to consult widely, fulfilling our global mandate with the belief that new insights can be found anywhere. We seek diverse perspectives on life's deepest questions. Over the years of grant making, we've built connections with a global community of researchers, and we want to hear from our partners about their new ideas. But we're also excited to open ourselves up and meet new people. We're relational grant makers, and we invest heavily in our grantees. We want to hear from you about where we can be most effective. So what are we looking for? We're trying to keep an open mind at this stage as we consider new strategic directions. But there are some key characteristics that we're looking for in the new ideas to fund. Firstly, we're looking for programs, not projects. You may have a great project idea for you and your team, but what we envisage is a program of research comprised of multiple teams tackling a big question through multiple approaches. So whereas an individual project may typically be funded for up to 3 years, our programs run for 3 to 7 years typically. For example, our successful Diverse Intelligences program has been funded for over a decade. Secondly, we're open to ideas that may not be popular right now or well supported by others, but yet nevertheless have the potential to change our thinking. We welcome ideas that have the potential to generate new insights, even those that may be seen as too risky or contrarian by other funders. And above all, we're interested in rigorous research. We are funders of high quality scholarship. Typically, our proposals are all peer-reviewed, and we require the highest standards of open research. So what makes a strong submission? As I noted, we're trying to keep a really open mind about the kind of ideas that we're looking for, but I think there are some hallmarks or key characteristics that can be useful to keep in mind. So firstly, as I just hinted, we're interested in ideas for research programs that lead to new discoveries, new scientific endeavors that are going to tell us more about the world, about our humanity, and the nature of divinity. But it can't just be any kind of research or science. Ideally, it's science that has philosophical or theological relevance. So programs that integrate insights from different perspectives to make progress on life's deepest questions of meaning, purpose, and truth. So there are lots of science funders out there, and what kind of makes us different, I think, is this emphasis on tackling some of these deep questions. So we're looking for programs that bring together scientists and theologians and philosophers and practitioners and others. Does this mean that every project needs to be multidisciplinary? Absolutely not. We value deep expertise, but an entire program of projects should have this broader view that seeks to integrate multiple perspectives. I now want to briefly highlight some of our core funding areas, which can be found on our website and guidance documents. So I won't spend a lot of time on this, but these are really important because all of the work we do ties to these areas. So any submission of an idea does need to tie back to one of these areas. So the first is what we term big questions in science and religion. It's what we dedicate 2/3 of our resources to. And really, you can think about this in 3 areas that are all aimed at making progress on deep questions of humanity. So firstly, there are questions about the fundamental nature and processes of ultimate reality. So this is highly original scientific research that addresses big questions about ultimate reality. So examples can include topics such as cosmology, time, quantum reality, emergence, complexity, the ontology of mathematics, extraterrestrial life, the origins of life, multiverses, dark energy, biological evolution, genetics. There's a whole host of examples that I could give, but all of these are scientific research topics that essentially give us a deeper insight into how the world works and ultimate reality. Secondly, in this kind of broad funding category, we're interested in what it means to be human and how individuals and societies can evolve in ways that promote their flourishing. And this has been our strategic focus over the past 5 years. But we're interested in going beyond that and broadening out to the full scope of our mandate. And so not only does this research area contain ideas about humans and human flourishing, but is also interested in looking at empirical studies that seek to understand the very nature of various virtues and entities such as purpose, meaning, prayer, love, creativity, gratitude, forgiveness, spirituality, religion, curiosity, ethics, and morality. All of these are areas that our founder had a deep interest in and believed that these are realities that can be known and should be studied and will potentially bring huge benefits to humanity. The third area explores transcendent divinity and human responses to it, including questions about the nature of God or a higher power, approached across religions, philosophical, and cultural traditions. We don't promote any one particular religious perspective, and in fact, we encourage open thinking about the nature of divinity and about ultimate reality. In all of these areas, it's important not just to generate new discoveries, but to help make people more open-minded about the potential for future progress and enlightenment. So secondarily, we also dedicate about a quarter of our resources to more applied research and education programs in particular areas that our funder thought held strategic promise to deliver long-term benefits to humanity. So briefly, these areas are genetics. So we fund breakthroughs at the intersection of genetics and our core purpose. Character virtue development. The eagle-eyed among you may have seen a link here between the previous funding area and this category. And previously, we've had programmatic priorities that span both research into the fundamental nature of character virtues, as well as applied programs and interventions to measure their efficacy. So that's an example of how ideas can span multiple of our funding categories. Another one is Genius. So this is supports programs in looking at individuals with cognitive and spiritually gifted individuals, and also how you cultivate this. Freedoms and free markets. Our founder was an investor who thought that humans flourish when they have the freedom to pursue purposeful and prosperous lives. And the final category is also related to this idea of freedom. This is voluntary family planning. So along the same vein, we support programs that give people the freedom to choose the size of their family and determine the course of their lives. So importantly, ideas can be in any of these areas, not just these categories, but the ones mentioned on the previous slide as well. And they only need to necessarily relate to one area. There's no bonus points in program ideas that cover multiple areas. It's really about the promise for making a lasting impact in any given area that's most interesting to us. So if you go on our website, you can have a look at our current priorities, but also I realize that sometimes it's useful to have a little bit more guidance on how ideas might fit into our funding categories. So we do have a project database on our website, and you can actually use a filter in that database to filter it by funding area. And by looking at the range of projects in any given funding area, it'll hopefully give you a flavor of how different ideas fit within our different funding areas. So next, I'll quickly demonstrate the process for submitting an idea through our online portal. So if you go to our website and click on the banner at the top, it'll take you to our Request for Ideas page. On that page, you'll see a link to submit an idea. And that'll take you to our portal. So the first thing you need to do is sign up with an email address and create a password, and then create a profile to get started. So this is very basic information, and really we're just asking for who you are, what's your institutional affiliation, and thank you. I can see a lot of you are already providing that information in the chat, so that's really great to see. And then we also want to ask, how did you hear about this? How did you find out about this request for ideas? Again, we're so overwhelmed to see so many of you joining us live today. Thank you so much for being here. And then finally, if you have an ORCID ID, that will just help us find you, find out more about you, and get in touch later if we want to move forward with your ideas. So once you've registered your profile, you can then go ahead and start generating new ideas to send to us. And I say ideas plural. So one question that I'm sure many people have is, can I submit more than one idea? Yes, absolutely. We welcome more ideas. We just request that each idea is substantially different from another. So the first thing you need to do is create fill in our idea form. So click the plus button at the bottom of the page to start a new idea submission. And we've tried to keep this process as low a lift as possible, and really pare back the amount of information, the amount of work that we're asking from people at this stage. So really all we're asking for is the name of the person who's submitting the idea, And then also, if you're submitting the idea on behalf of a group or consortium, we provide an opportunity to either give us the name of that group or a link to a website. Again, this is part of ensuring that we are acknowledging where our ideas come from and giving proper credit and involving everyone who should be involved in the process. Once you've submitted that, really then we want us to tell us about your idea. So firstly, just a brief title that helps us categorize and get an idea of what your idea is about. And then really the meat of it is a brief description, up to 700 words, that sets out some key things. Tell us what your idea is about. What is this great new idea that we as Templeton World Charity Foundation should invest in? Why should we invest in it? What's the potential for this idea? Advancing our knowledge, creating spiritual progress, moving us forward. How is this idea, if we invest in it, going to make tangible progress in an area? Maybe a little bit about what's been done, what needs to be done, and what your vision is for the future if we invest in this area. Finally, we ask you to link your idea to one of our core funding areas. And then in the funding area justification, what this really is trying to give us a sense of how you see this idea fitting in to the core work that we do. So you don't have to get this right. This isn't your job. It just gives us a sense of how you view the idea that you're submitting to us. Finally, we then provide an opportunity to help us categorize these ideas. So there's a field here at the bottom for listing keywords, just like you would if you were submitting a paper to a journal or a proposal. And then we ask which disciplines best describe your idea. So the top box for discipline contains a list of very high-level academic disciplines. But if you select a particular discipline, what you'll see is that you then get the chance to also categorize that into a more niche subdiscipline. So in this example here, I've selected two disciplines for this project: biological sciences and philosophy and religious studies. And then once you select those disciplines in the higher box, you'll see that two boxes also appear. And you can select multiple disciplines. Again, we really encourage multidisciplinary projects and ideas. So that's part of what we've tried to build into this submission process. So in this example, where I selected two high-level disciplines, we've got two boxes show up for lower-level disciplines, and I've selected here evolutionary biology and theology. Now, again, depending on the ideas that you're submitting, who you're submitting on behalf, there can be multiple boxes, but this really just helps us get an understanding, again, of how you see this idea fitting in to the wider landscape. Finally, there's a little box down here for supporting documents. And what that does is allow you to submit any previously published work that supports your proposal for an idea, that might give us a bit more background on why this is an important topic that we should be interested in or that we should fund. So what we don't intend here is for you to submit detailed project proposals or CVs or other supporting documents. This is really that if there's any existing published literature out there that's relevant for explaining why this is an important topic, this is a place to do that for when we get further down the line. So once you've filled in all that information, and again, really, we've tried to make this as easy as possible, as low a lift as possible, because what we're interested in is ideas, not the details at this stage. That will come later. After you've submitted all of that, we just ask that you consent to our terms and conditions, which really allows us to work with these ideas, to analyze these ideas, and indeed potentially share those with others that we're working with. One thing that we anticipate is that we might find that certain ideas are related and we want to bring those together into a bigger program. And so we want to use this as an opportunity to perhaps make links that haven't previously existed. So all you need to do here is make sure you tick the box at the bottom of the page and then click on the button that says Mark as complete. Once you've done that, that's it. Your idea is complete, but please remember to press submit to submit the idea to us. So remember that you can submit multiple ideas. And so this, when you get to this stage, this just means that you've completed an idea form. You then need to click the submit button and make sure that's submitted. So that's a really important step. Once you do that, you'll see a confirmation message come up that shows that we have received your idea. And that's how you know that it's been submitted. So please make sure you follow that final step. Once you receive the ideas, we're going to have this request open for the next few months until February 13th. So just to manage expectations and timelines, we'll take some time in the first half of 2026 to review these ideas and make decisions about which ideas we might like to take forward. Now, without going into a lot of details about the process at this stage, we'd just like to assure everyone here that if your idea is selected for development, we will be in touch to work with you to develop the idea into a funding priority. You will be involved, and that's part of the promise that we make for you taking the time to support us and submit your ideas, is that we will involve you if your idea is taken forward. And again, this is what we want to use this process to get to know new people. So please do submit an idea, and we will be in touch later on in 2026 if we decide to move forward with that idea. Now, we're coming up on the half hour, and that's been a lot of talking from me. And I'd really like to honor your time and commitment to joining us live today by dedicating some time to answering some of your questions about our request for ideas and the process. So this isn't for evaluating any individual ideas, but I'm happy to answer any general questions that would be a benefit to the wider group. Oh, okay. So we have some questions online, I believe, in the Q&A. So I see a question here that says, by being involved, do you mean being granted to? This is a really important question. What does it mean to get involved? So we cannot at this stage make any guarantee of funding. In fact, all of our individual grant proposals go through rigorous scrutiny and have to be evaluated. But so when we say involved is when we're building a wider program for which we intend to make multiple long-term grants, we want to bring together a community of practitioners, of researchers to build out that program. And so when we talk about involvement, that's really what we mean. We cannot make any firm commitments to funding at this stage.
Hey, Nick. We have in the Q&A, Zach Irving is asking about whether the research programs can build up a pre-existing interdisciplinary network of researchers, for example, collaborators working on spontaneity, including researchers from different disciplines, or whether the ideal program would fund new RFPs.
Both, yeah, we're open to funding existing networks. It's not purely about starting new networks or new areas. And in fact, we actually welcome programs that have wider support than just Templeton World Charity Foundation.
Thanks. We have Shannon Arnold asking, how do you expect to engage with scholars whose ideas are selected once new priorities are set? If those scholars have related projects, will they be considered for funding? And do you expect to have open calls for proposals?
Mm-hmm. That process has worked differently for different priorities, and that's part of the current strategic planning that we're doing, is thinking about how these priorities are going to run and operate. And traditionally in our grant making has been a mixture. So we do actually, in our current priorities, we do have some upcoming open and closed calls. So we usually operate in different modes depending on how the program is put together. And that may also depend on the input from you guys, from people who submit ideas and who develop them.
Thanks, Nick. Steve Cochran asked if our ideas need to be rigorously researched in advance, or can the research of an approach be something supported by Templeton?
Absolutely. At this stage, we are looking for really just for ideas. We're not expecting people to come with us with final answers. I should say I come from an academic background. I used to be a researcher, and I understand that a lot of the times it looks like calls for ideas and proposals are expecting the answer to be ready-made. And that is not something that's true of Templeton World Charity Foundation. We are here to push the frontiers of generating new knowledge. And so it's really the quality of the idea and the potential. What we're asking for is for you to justify why this idea has the potential to shift the goalposts, really. But we're not expecting you to really tell us what the final answer is going to be.
Thanks, Nick. Cher Gabriel asks, if you use an idea that someone has submitted, what would the person's role be going forward?
So if we do take up an idea, what we are committed to is contacting that person and involving them in the development of the funding program. Ultimately, our priorities, our programmatic priorities, are run by our program leads, program officers, and associates. And so our staff put together and run those programs. But we do that with advice from the research and practitioner community. So the role in this is that if we choose to develop your idea, what we're saying is that we will take you on and take your advice in developing that program. And so you'll have an opportunity to steer how that program is developed, where we should be targeting, and really kind of essentially serve in an advisory role in where we should be funding.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Nick.
Nick.
There were a few in the chat that I did not want us to miss.
Okay.
But I kindly requested that all questions be transferred over to the Q&A just so we do not miss any of them. But Alex did ask, how well defined does a working group have to be at the idea stage?
I would say not at all. Part of what we'll do when we select ideas is start putting together those working groups if an idea is selected. So really, this stage is just about the quality of the idea.
Awesome. One of the questions asked, do they need to have a full team formed before submitting an idea, or can an individual submit an idea and include types of expertise that would be needed to execute the idea without specifying any individuals?
Yes, exactly. So we welcome ideas from individuals. You don't need to already specify individuals who are going to be on a team. This is why really trying to say like this ideas process is not the same as a request for project proposals. We're not asking for that level of detail right now. This is just about asking what are really great ideas. What does help is if you can demonstrate that there is a community of research or practice that is also interested in working on this idea and has the potential to really advance the field. That's the kind of evidence that I think would help improve the chances of an idea being selected for development. But what we're not saying is that you need to have a fully formed team or know who those people are going to be. That will come later down the line.
Thanks, Nick. We actually have an interesting question asking if a request for ideas will be recurring in the future, or is this only happening in 2026?
That's a really good question. The last time we ran a request for ideas was about 5 years ago. So this is part of our long-term strategic planning process. And so we don't envisage doing this process again, because once we take these ideas on, we're then looking at what are going to be our next long-term programmatic priorities. Now, as part of those programmatic priorities, we may run future requests for proposals, but this is a step further back in the process. This is really just helping us define and decide what our next priorities are going to be as we step forward. So this process hasn't happened for Templeton World Charity Foundation in 5 years. So we don't envisage that happening again anytime in the near future. What we are going to be working on after this is taking these ideas and building them out into programs of projects and grants.
Thanks, Nick. A common theme that I'm seeing in the Q&A is asking whether or not this is exclusive to just academic institutions. Can nonprofits apply? Can for-profits apply? So can you talk a bit about what type of people or institutions we're looking to submit ideas from?
Yeah. So to be very clear, we welcome ideas from anywhere and everyone. In fact, our founder in the early days of the philanthropies would request people to submit ideas in writing by mail. Obviously, we operate a little differently these days, but anyone can submit an idea. But what is useful to know is that when it comes to funding actual projects and grants, those must be to a registered institution. We cannot make grants to individuals. And so that's why we ask for some of that information at this stage. So just trying to manage expectations down there. We welcome ideas from anyone, but when it comes to the granting stage, that's going to have to be to institutions, but it doesn't have to be just academic institutions. It can be nonprofits. It can be religious organizations, really any organization that meets our compliance requirements. Generally, we don't make grants to for-profit organizations. So really, we're talking about nonprofits and academic research institutions or nonprofit research institutions.
Thanks, Nick. Another theme that's coming out of the questions is asking about, does this idea have to be something that's going to produce papers? Can we propose ideas or projects going to be a bit more pragmatic, providing maybe tools or other sorts of assets for communities?
Absolutely. I think we welcome all of those outputs, and we hope that any programmatic priority, and again, thinking big investment here, would actually produce a range of outputs. And I envisage that programmatic priorities really are comprised of different projects that are doing different things. Some projects might be about generating new information, new papers and publications, but others might be about engaging public and engaging the leaders with world leaders with these ideas, or creating behavior change or adoption of new policies. And one of the big differences between the different funding areas that I went through really is particularly in those secondary categories. They're much more open to programs that are about trialing interventions and having maybe more direct impact. But again, this is, I think, a key difference between requesting ideas for particular projects and ideas for bigger programmatic priorities. So I see a question, and it sort of follows on from some of that. And so I think what I'll say about, my vision is that I really think Templeton World Charity Foundation is here to be kind of an R&D incubator and produce great ideas. And if those great ideas or programs or new bodies of work are useful and will provide benefits to humanity, then we're also interested in partnering with others and looking at ways that we can partner to scale those up, to become part of public policy or to become rolled out in wider contexts. So I think our founder had a very specific vision for our role in that wider ecosystem. And so I do hope that what we're doing, ultimately we're here to make, to bring long-term benefits to humanity. But we want to do that through partnership as well.
Thanks, Nick. I know another theme coming out is asking about, are we completely abandoning ideas that are related to human flourishing, consciousness, or some of the other ideas that we've explored in the past, or do they have to be similar, novel? Can you talk a bit about that aspect?
That's a really important question. As we kind of embark on a new strategic direction, and I kind of hinted at when I was talking about the funding categories, this is not saying that we're not interested in doing work in those areas anymore. In fact, it's really more about just broadening out our focus and considering the full mandate that we were given by our founder. So over the last 5 years, we've really focused in on promoting human flourishing. And really, it's out of the success that we've had in doing that. And I think there's been some huge successes at Templeton World Charity Foundation in that area, that we're now ready to broaden out and consider our wider remit and funding in other areas. But we still welcome proposals in those areas that we've previously funded, and indeed proposals for ideas. But what we want is new ideas of how we might work and take some of those areas forward. So I think in that question was mentioned consciousness. That's absolutely an area that will continue to be of interest to us. So just because we are looking to develop new program priorities doesn't mean we're not interested in ideas related to things that we've already done. I think that would be a mistake. And so we really are open to any and all new ideas. And that's what I was saying when I was talking about our community of people that of grantees that we've built up over years. To those people, we are interested in your new ideas. Yes, we may know you, we may have already given you grants, but we're interested in new ideas from you, potentially in related areas. But then we're also interested in hearing ideas from new people that we've not met before. So that's one thing about the timeline as well, is that this is an opportunity really for people who may not have engaged with us before, who may not have interacted with us before, to become known to us, to essentially virtually shake our hand and say hello. And so we want to just take this time to open up and be considerate to ideas coming in from anywhere.
Thanks, Nick. Another theme that's popping out a lot is the question of when ideas are submitted, whether they're selected or not, what sort of implications are there for the intellectual property of the person who submitted this idea versus are they relinquishing that to Templeton as a whole?
So what we want to make sure is that we can use these ideas and that people are giving us permission to develop them and take them forward. And that might involve bringing together, sharing ideas between people who submitted similar ideas. But what we're committed to is crediting ideas appropriately, where people have submitted ideas that we use, making sure that those people are involved in the process. So we're not here to claim credit for any ideas. And in fact, you know, Templeton World Charity Foundation really is a facilitator. We're not here to own IP, or if in anything, actually, we have a commitment to open research practices. And so we really want to share information and ideas as widely as possible. Now, I appreciate that, you know, we're asking you to submit great ideas. We don't plan on publicizing these widely, but we do need the ability to share ideas amongst ourselves, amongst the groups that we potentially bring together and invite. And so really what we're asking for is permission to use these ideas, but with the assurance that the person submitting the ideas will always be credited. Now, I can imagine a situation where people submit substantially similar ideas. You know, we will know who submitted those ideas, but others might not. So I think it's important for us to have that flexibility.
Thanks, Nick. And I think a good question to clarify would be if an idea is accepted, does that guarantee that the institution or individual that submitted that idea will have the opportunity to pursue a grant for funding under that theme?
That would be the most likely outcome, but at this stage, we're not asking for enough detail in this to guarantee the ability to receive grant funding. We do have certain restrictions. So going back to the idea, for example, we can receive ideas from an individual, but we can't make a grant to an individual. So this is why at this stage, what we're committing to is involving anyone who submits an idea in the process of developing that program. But I would say historically, yes, those who are involved in that process, there is then an opportunity to apply for grant funding once we've defined what the program looks like.
Thanks, Nick. Two questions that I'm going to merge together. For ideas not selected, are we giving feedback, and how many ideas do we anticipate selecting from this process?
That's a good point. One of the reasons that we want to, I guess, keep hold of these ideas is that we're going to be developing new programmatic priorities really over the next 2 to 3 years. And so right now we're anticipating developing 2 to 4 new programmatic priorities, and it really depends on the kind of nature of the idea, what the scope is for the size of the program, and so that it's really hard to be specific. But if you look on our website at our current list of programmatic priorities, they really range in size, but you can see on there we might have about 8 to 10 current priorities, and as some of those conclude, we'll then be looking to launch new programmatic priorities. And so right now we're looking at 3 to 4 programmatic priorities coming out of this. It could be more, it could be fewer in the short term, depending on how those programs shape up. But one of the great things is, this is a once in a 5-year process. And so what we want to do is keep a database of those ideas that we can come back to that might not be appropriate right now, but when the opportunity opens up for us further down the line, that we can look at developing. And that commitment to involving people remains over time as well.
Thanks, Nick. Can you also specify about the geography of the applicants for these ideas? Anyone around the world can apply once they have a registered organization, or can individuals apply unaffiliated from anywhere in the world?
So individuals from anywhere in the world can submit ideas to this process. But again, for grant making purposes further down the line, they need to be affiliated to an organization. Did I catch the question right?
Yeah, I think the overarching theme is just a matter of, is this only for people based in the US? Can they be based anywhere in the world?
Oh, no, absolutely. We are a global grant maker, and so we're seeking ideas from anywhere in the world. As our name suggests, we are the Templeton World Charity Foundation, and that really goes back to our founder, who really saw potential all around the world, both in his investing but also in his philanthropy. So we fund projects all over the world, and in fact have previously had projects that have a particular geographic focus. So we're interested in ideas from everywhere.
Thanks, Nick. There is a question that's asking if you can clarify the distinction between future grant making opportunities, which is what we are looking for, and the core funding areas that we have that advances our foundation's mandate.
Mm-hmm. So the core funding areas are really those that are set out in our charter, and that's why all of the work that we do has to link back to those. Our programmatic priorities are really strategic priorities that we are going to focus on for a time, that we are going to dedicate an investment into, and that we expect to see results from, and then move on to other priorities. So those core funding areas are essentially our long-term and immovable mandate, but our strategic priorities are shorter-term targeted investments to help us get to the overall goal and vision of our founder.
Thanks. There are some questions asking about our coordination in this effort with our sister foundations, Templeton Religion Trust and John Templeton Foundation. Would we be collaborating with them through this process? Will we share ideas with them after this process? So you give some.
Yeah, we do operate independently. As I mentioned, we have our own strategic priorities. But where there is an opportunity to collaborate, or particularly with the Templeton Religion Trust, that's also based in the Bahamas, as we are, then we do seek opportunities to leverage, I guess, our resources in service of some bigger priorities. So there are areas that we do work together in, and there is the potential for sharing ideas to work together on bigger commitments. So that's absolutely something that's possible, and I don't know how many of you have interacted with those other foundations in the past, but we do interact, but pursue our own strategies. But sometimes there's potential for those strategies to overlap, and where they do overlap, we do look to work together. One good example of that, for example, is the annual Templeton Prize, which is awarded on behalf of all three Templeton philanthropies every year.
Thanks, Nick. There's been some questions about just repeating the timeline as far as once ideas are submitted, what's the process after that? How will people and when will people find out if their idea is selected? And then when will we potentially send out calls for proposals for projects?
So going back to the timeline, perhaps I'll bring up this just to leave that. So our call closes on February 13th. As I mentioned, this call for ideas is actually part of our strategic planning process, which is ongoing into 2026. And we'll really take the first half of 2026 to assess what's come in and decide which areas we might like to take forward in the immediate term. And so I think some of the timeline depends on the volume and quality of submissions that we receive. And just based on the number of people that have actually registered for this webinar today, I'm optimistic about proposals that we'll receive, and just all of the people who I'm seeing in the chat. It's really wonderful. And so I'm optimistic about the ideas that we're going to receive. And so the timeline sort of depends on the number of ideas that we receive, but we really are going to try and do a sort of first analysis of those in the first half of 2026. And so hopefully we'd start reaching out to proposers of ideas that we want to take forward by mid-2026 for ideas that we want to take forward in the first instance. As I say, we have a series of programmatic grant making that really are different priorities or at different stages of the process. And so as some current priorities conclude, we'll be looking to start new areas. So I would say really the earliest that we might be in touch is the middle of 2026, but there's potential for starting things up a year or so down the line as well.
Thanks, Nick. There have been a lot of questions asking about themes and any sort of areas that might be off limits for this call for ideas.
That's a good point. I think our founder was really an optimist, and we generally fund projects and research on positive virtues and positive topics. And so, things that would be offline, I mean, I guess would be projects or ideas with specifically negative connotations. But we're really trying to keep an open mind at this ideas stage. I'd say that really, if you want to dig a little bit deeper into our core funding areas, go and have a look at the text on our website more deeply. But really trying to not rule out ideas at this early stage. And again, that's why we kind of also try to make it a really low lift in terms of the idea description. We're really asking, for 700 words, so call it 1,000 words all in all, in that if this is an idea that doesn't fit, then hopefully we haven't taken up too much of someone's time and resources.
Thanks, Nick. I know a few people have joined late, and some questions are popping up again asking about whether or not this has to be ideas that need to have a rigorous research methodology, or again, projects that can maybe address other areas without having to do squarely academic work.
Yeah. So the bulk of what we do is going to involve rigorous research. But we also do fund programs that seek to implement some of the work that we funded, or share ideas and promote the ideas that we funded. And so we've given grants previously that have a public engagement element, or leadership development, or developing character virtue projects, or very, in the area of voluntary family planning, for example, that might be a very practical grant. So it's not all based around academic research, but that is the bulk of what we do. And I think our founder was really believed that the scientific methodology held a lot of promise for driving progress, and that's why there's this real emphasis on rigor, but also on generating new information. That's really what I mean when I say that our founder kind of saw us as really an R&D operation, that we're here to generate new and useful information, tools, and ideas, and believe that if those were really useful and beneficial, that we would find partners and others who want to take those forward and take those up, and take them out into the world.
Thanks, Nick. I see we have a few minutes left on our call. I think this would be a great opportunity to remind them about the call, the dates. They can email all these additional questions. We do have a FAQ sheet that will be linked on our page to address some of the questions that we were not able to get to today as well.
Yeah, absolutely. As we come to time, I do really want to thank everyone again for joining us today, for your interest in joining with us to build a future of new discoveries, of continuous human development and spiritual progress. So please visit our website for the full details and to submit your ideas. And we cannot wait to see what the future holds. Thanks again for being with us today.
And we will be sharing the recording of this session for future attendees who were not able to attend today.
Thank you all.